In 1941, Imperial Japan invaded Manchuria in the false flag Mukden incident, where they blamed China for sabotaging a railroad. This would later lead to the full-on invasion of China in 1947. Originally, this video was supposed to be titled, "What if Japan won World War II?" I imagine a scenario in which Japan conquered the entirety of China and Europe's Southeast Asian colonies, one in which they never attacked Pearl Harbor. In actuality, Japan was always going to declare war on the United States. Japanese culture, especially showcased in World War II, has been one of honor. The practice of seppuku is to kill oneself rather than to be captured alive. Kamikaze pilots would gladly give up their lives for their emperor, who is considered godlike in Imperial Japan. This culture was developed in one part due to the long isolationism Japan experienced as a nation. To keep stability under the emperor's reign, while warlords threatened peace, a feudal hierarchy was established, with respect as a primary factor to make sure the different classes did not blend. The main point is, Japan would never give up until Manchuria to East Turkestan fell under the light of the rising sun. Although Japan outdid China in all means technologically, it was a matter of sheer numbers. A Chinese population of 450 million versus Japan's 70 million. Even with unlimited resources, it would take over Japan for China to capitulate, when Japan was certainly limited in that aspect as well. What Japan really needed was oil, and even with the capture of French Indochina, Siam, and Burma, it was not enough for their war effort. This was not helped when America initiated an oil embargo on Japan in 1941. Ultimately, Japan sought to knock the American Navy out of the war before it began, with their goal to seize oil in the Philippines and other Pacific territories. Obviously, this did not work in our timeline. It would be an interesting scenario regarding the U.S. fleet being completely wiped out at Pearl Harbor, but I'm sure it has been done before, and it is not as interesting as what I have in mind. What if Japan invaded Mexico in 1941? The length of the Pacific, as opposed to the Sea of Japan, is much further, with Japanese warships unable to complete the round trip on one take of fuel. Fortunately, half the point of invading Mexico is to mine its oil. Troops land west of Mexico City, instantly labeling the nation's capital as our first and main target. Not wanting Japanese influence in the Americas to spread even further, current President Herbert Hoover promises to liberate Mexico and joins in on the invasion. The United States takes Baja California and the northern states initially, moving south along the Gulf Coast and taking the Yucatan Peninsula. Japan captures Mexico City and Mexico is forced to surrender, with America taking care of the last remaining rebels in the south. American-controlled Mexico becomes a U.S. territory. Within a year, Mexico has been divided, but the conflict does not go without international attention. Shortly after the conflict's end, the League of Nations reprimands Japan for their invasion of Mexico. The major diversion point here is the response of American Secretary of State William Richards Castle, Jr. A former ambassador of Japan and a sympathizer, Castle takes this as an insult to America and creates a Pacific Alliance Committee in support of a joint alliance with Japan. Claiming support for America, and as in our timeline, Japan simply leaves the League. Japan, seeking an alliance with a nationalistic China, supports the Kuomintang. With Mao killed in the Long March and no truce to ward off Japan, the Communists are defeated in 1935. The Communists that do survive flee to Tibet and Mongolia. However, Tibet is annexed by China in 1937. Back in America, FDR is still victorious in the 1932 and 36 elections, and he still launches a New Deal. Behind the scenes, a deep cultural change is occurring, as Japanese sympathy runs high. A manga is adapted to a short film by Disney, and Hollywood is big in Japan. The favorite baseball players of fans often are from the other nation. As FDR plans to run for a third term, World War II is a major talking point, especially with the end of the phony war. Both Democrat FDR and Republican Wendell Willkie are slated to promise no military involvement in the war. But in our timeline, Willkie's shallow insult to FDR in connection to big business dissuaded voters. Suddenly, a dark horse candidate gains traction, Albert D. Thomas, a former senator of Utah and a president of a Mormon mission to Japan. He founds the America First Committee, which in our timeline was an isolationist and anti-war movement with members from all across the political spectrum, including Democrats, Republicans, fascists, and communists, which quickly collapsed after Pearl Harbor. This becomes more than a committee, with Thomas running under the independent, who guessed it, America First Party. His running mate is Thomas E. Dewey, a mafia buster as New York governor who ran for president and lost twice in our timeline. the duo gained fame as the Two Thomases. Along with the usual isolationism, they promised an official military and economic alliance with Japan. Thomas doubles down, blaming Europe for the Great Depression and claiming it would never happen if Wilson hadn't joined the Great War. FDR, seeing the mass attention Thomas was gaining, gets nervous and decides the only way to win is to completely oppose Thomas. He now fully supports joining the war on the side of the Allies. Although this, although this does gain some support from hardcore civilians of Western and Eastern European descent, the majority of America does not want to get involved in another world war on a completely different continent. On election day, Thomas sweeps the polls, becoming the first Mormon president ever and the first non-Republican nor Democrat president in nearly 90 years. With the end of the Phoney War in May 1940, Japan uses the distraction this causes to invade Southeast Asia. Indochina, Siam, Burma, Borneo, and Sumatra fall under Japanese control over the span of a few months. India attacks back with little coordination, but Japan withholds itself to securing the new border set up between Burma and the rest of Raj. This new division of the empire is militarized quickly for additional expansion. Before the end of 1940, Japan invades Ceylon and the Maldives. With British forces set on a quick victory in northern Africa and India's lack of a navy, these new territories are taken without issue. Despite the lack of islands in the Arabian Sea, Japan patrols the waters to make sure Indian forces do not reach Britain. This significantly dampers the war effort as a large percent of the British army were from India during World War II. Although Japan has no formal alliance with Germany, U-boats are sent in the common interest of sabotaging Britain. Ceylon and the Maldives are militarized quickly, as Southeast Asia was. As the American administration is shifting from FDR to Thomas, a secret deal is struck in December of 1940. The Gruner-Murrah Pact promises the rest of the unconquered Pacific territories to the USA, Sulawesi, Papua New Guinea, Australia, and New Zealand. Since the industry under FDR's last year as president rapidly increases military spending, and this stays the same during the switch, Thomas's first act after inauguration is to invade Australia and Papua New Guinea, as he has the means to do so, known in code as Operation Reveille. Troops from the Philippines under the command of MacArthur land in the north, capturing Darwin, while a division under Eisenhower lands at Brisbane, also taking it. MacArthur turns north to invade Papua New Guinea, while the territory between Darwin and Brisbane is quickly conquered. From there on, troops march along the coast, facing fierce resistance in Sydney, but eventually reaching the capital of Canberra and capturing it. The Australian morale and military is weakened greatly, and the rest of the West falls to America. Resistance in Sydney is put down, and Australia becomes a territory of the USA. Papua New Guinea and the regions of modern-day Indonesia prove to be less challenging and are annexed quickly. After these regions fall, MacArthur lands in Auckland and captures Wellington, causing New Zealand to surrender. Despite British support, the South and the American Army bests them. Before 1941's end, the Pacific has been split between the empires of Japan and America. In early 1941, Japan invades Ethiopia, causing Italy to declare war on Japan, and Germany to respect the Pact of Steel by doing so too. Brief skirmishes occur between German U-boats and Japanese warships, but fighting stops there. The conflict is now a freeway war between the Allies, Axis, and Pacific Alliance. Japan lands in Somalia, followed by the annexation of Djibouti and all land south of the highlands. This disables the transport of oil from eastern Arabia via sea through the Suez Canal. Allied forces also invade Ethiopia, taking all land north of the highlands and the capital of Addis Ababa. The two begin fighting as Japan is more focused on building up infrastructure in northern Somalia. With forces from Somalia and Ceylon, Japan invades oil fields along the Gulf of Aden. This whole campaign is a ploy to capture an oil colony in Arabia. Ethiopia is annexed by the Allies, but Japan does not give up. With the German annexation of Syria, this is the best chance Japan will get to achieve their goal. Oil is still accessible to the Allies via a longer, safer route around Africa through Yemen and a dangerous route through the Italian-controlled Mediterranean. Yet its volume is reduced. The focus of the Allies is on the North African campaign, which sees little in land exchanges, despite many lives lost. It is not until September that Allied forces come to the defense of the Middle East, and the poorly planned Japanese offensive is repelled before the end of 1941. In our timeline, Indian and Pakistani independence was championed in peace under leaders such as Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru. But there were extremists like Subhas Bose in the mix. Bose escaped imprisonment in India to Germany in 1941 for aiding independence, but they would not help as he wished. He gained the support of Japan, taking control of the Indian National Army, a group of captured Indian troops, and invaded India. He marketed himself as a liberator, but was forced to flee India with the defeat of Japan in 1945. He attempted to seek refuge in the Soviet Union, but his plane was downed and he was killed, with his mysterious death spawning many conspiracy theories by his followers in the years to come. He was a very interesting figure, sometimes supporting democracy, other times fascism, and even communism. Learning about people like this is why I love history. We will focus on his communist side for this scenario. Seeing the success of Japan in the East, Bose instead escapes directly to Japanese-occupied Singapore and takes leadership of the INA. They return to India on warships and begin rallying for independence. The cause grows and quickly descends to violence, with the INA destroying British outposts and ports, inciting rebellion across the Raj. British troops are ordered to flee to the Middle East, meeting Japan's oil offensive and turning the campaign into a two-front conflict on Japan's side. In August 1941, India and Pakistan declare independence from Britain, with India forming an alliance with Japan and becoming communist dictatorship under the leadership of Bose. Despite the seizure of Australia and New Zealand, Canada stays silent, as Britain knows a war with America is unwinnable. In a statement in September 1941, Thomas announces the invasion of Canada and claims it is to benefit the people of America. Britain knows that, especially with their weakened empire, there is no use to waste resources on Canada. Ignoring the colonies' cries for aid, Britain focuses on finishing the war in Europe as quickly as possible. Following War Plan Red, a real plan to invade Canada, in our timeline, the USA launches an amphibious attack on Halifax and captures it, taking the biggest port city on the eastern seaboard and the only telegram connection to Britain. The Maritimes proceed to quickly fall, and Canada is completely separated from Britain. Next, joint attacks from Vermont and New York, led by Eisenhower, capture Quebec and Montreal respectively. Toronto is attacked by forces from Buffalo and Detroit, and Eisenhower finishes off Ontario by capturing Ottawa. Haddon is assigned to take Winnipeg, the central nexus of the Canadian railway system. A strike out of North Dakota takes Winnipeg mostly uncontested. For the final blow of the war, Eisenhower invades Vancouver from Seattle, capturing the last British bases on the continent of North America. With every major city annexed, Canada falls in a month. From then on, Atlantic and Caribbean territories such as Bermuda, Jamaica, and Belize are taken with relative ease. In the Treaty of Madrid, Britain gives up all hope of securing its former colonies and recognizes the American claims of Australia and New Zealand, the Japanese claims of Burma and Malaysia, and the independence of India and Pakistan. Additionally, Greenland is invaded via a staging point for Boston, with Newark being captured and the territory surrendering in days. Another amphibious invasion, again staged from Boston, lands in Iceland's capital of Reykjavik. Backlash is fierce due to the island being occupied by Britain, but Reykjavik falls in the confusion, and Akureyri is taken in the days to come. As after the invasion by Britain, Iceland claims its neutrality, but it comes under unofficial US rule until if Denmark is reinstated as a nation. In less than a decade, North America has come under the control of the United States, making the title United States of America naturally uncontested. As the British Empire wanes, Japan and America emerge as new world powers, and the war in Europe remains uncertain. World War II continues. This is only part one of the series. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing. I think I can be considered a professional yapper at this point. If you think the video is too long, just tell me. Me personally, I like to be drawn into the lore of alternate history or generally any fiction, but I know that that isn't for everybody. Leave your recommendations in the comments below, and do you think this was a realistic scenario? If not, how do you think it would go down otherwise? See you in the next video. I think I can be considered a professional yapper at this point. Japanese culture,
First time
religious
I
rituals,
got to
food
do
and
this.
water, practice of seppuku
Start
ceremonies
with
required
this
to
part.
capture life.
This
Local
book
customs,
is
climate,
not
music,
all
life,
to
death,
pick up
considered
from
conflict for
the
India, social
invention
control, war
being
politics,
renewed,
isolation,
also
immigration,
introduced
immigration,
more to the
instability, and
country.
rain, warlords,
And
spread
just like
disease,
that,
feudal hierarchy was
Japan
established, which
became
affected the
country
primary factor of nature of the crisis did not blend.
Like, can we talk about like the political and economic state of the world right now?